I had a lot of odd experiencing as a child, seeing things that weren't necessarily there, hearing things that weren't necessarily there. And by the time I was meditating regularly, I was really feeling a very familiar presence that was even from my childhood, just around. I put a recording software on my phone and went into what I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know. I just an allowing state. And when I came back to myself, because the alarm went off, it was time to pick up my kids, there was talking on this recording to my dismay and surprise. So that was my first experience with channeling. You can't really avoid even hearing your own voice when you're channeling.
Today's guest is Jessie Herman. Jessie is a spiritual channel, a transformational coach, an author, and a healer. And she channels a non-physical entity called Vagrein. So we want to welcome you to the show, Jessie. Thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, I want to start by mentioning that I know some people say that they've had a spiritual awakening that opened them up to these types of channeling abilities. And then others say that they've had sort of a precognition or an ability that they feel like they've had since they were a child. So what would you say your experience has been as far as how you discovered that you had this ability to channel?
So it's a bit of column A and a bit of column B in my case, in that I had a lot of odd experiencing as a child, seeing things that weren't necessarily there, hearing things that weren't necessarily there, and what my parents at the time called a very vivid imagination. And I did get into a little bit of trouble for having this vivid imagination, because to me it was very real, and to everyone else it was, me making things up or looking for attention or whatever it was. And so I learned over time to kind of pack that up and ignore it or hope it went away and put those things on a bit of a back burner or a shelf. Then later on in life, I was actually pregnant with my daughter. Some of these things started seeping back in, and it was, oh gosh, are we going to revisit that thing? No, it's my imagination type of thing. But after she was born, I had a bit of like postpartum depression, or was not in my best state of mind, and just simply with a newborn did not have time to go get help. Like my first resources would be like, you go to a therapist or you get some help externally to rebalance you, but there just wasn't any time with a newborn around. And so I decided to take up meditation. I'd heard a lot of wonderful things about meditation and how that could help you to feel more calm and clear your mind. And I hoped that would help me, get through the hormonal, whatever was going on, and give me a bit of space from the feelings I was experiencing. And then that's when everything started to come back online. So I started sort of feeling things again, sensing things again. And that really kicked off my spiritual journey. First sort of law of attraction type of stuff. Someone at a dinner party had passed me the book, The Secret, and said, this is really cool. You'd like this. And then that led into one thing, into another thing, into non-duality. And by the time I was meditating regularly, I was really feeling a very familiar presence that was even from my childhood, just around. And I didn't want to step into whatever gifts I had. I had no intention of being weird. I was always very afraid of being strange. And so I ignored it, and it got stronger. And then I just got so fed up with this invitation. I'll call it an invitation, but it was a bit of a pressure. It felt like a little bit of a something going on in the energy field. And I said to it, look, I'm not the person you're looking for. I don't have these gifts. I'm not whatever it is that you want to come through. I'm not a channel like Esther Hicks and all these amazing characters. I'm not interested in this thing, and I'll prove it to you by allowing whatever is going on to go on. Right now, I put a recording software on my phone and went into what I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know. I just an allowing state. And when I came back to myself, because the alarm went off, it was time to pick up my kids, there was talking on this recording to my dismay and surprise. So that was my first experience with channeling.
So Jessie, can you share exactly what is a channel and what kind of channel are you?
My understanding of what channeling is that we have this physical vessel, each and every one of us. We have this material thing through which we can speak, through which we can express, we can move around the physical world and environment. And channeling is nothing more than taking your personality or your individuation and allowing it to animate this piece of meat that you've been given with a connection to. So I really believe that everyone is already a channel. The definition or the expression that we use when we're talking about channels, specifically people who can call through something else, is simply the allowing of your primary, let's say, beingness to move out of the way and allow your body and your brain and maybe your vocabulary, your whatever it is this component to bring through something that is not necessarily you. So that can be an angel, that can be a ghost, that can be, in my case, it's an entity group or a consciousness. And I think that we're all doing even that level of channeling very frequently. Like when you're an artist, if you're painting, you don't really know where that energy is coming from, but something is coming through that you may not necessarily consciously be able to identify as this is me. So that to me is what channeling is. In my case, I'm a full trance channel. So in order to allow, I have the ability, or I don't even know what it is, to allow something through without my primary consciousness being very aware of it. It's as if it doesn't just get into sort of like the passenger seat of the car of my vehicle, my human isness, but gets into the back seat and starts reading a different magazine and not really paying attention to where it's going. So not trying to drive at all. Whereas there are some channels who are more present and are like, hey, we got to go this way, we got to go that way. So I feel like it's just a different levels of the ways in which that energy is allowed to drive the car.
I love that you said that you were trying not to be weird. There's so many of us that go through that. Like I know I'm a weirdo, but I embrace it now, but I didn't. I mean, I remember going to therapy because I'm like, I'm weird. So that's really funny how we stifle ourselves, and you have this wonderful gift. So that being said, now that you are, a full-blown, beautiful channelist, is it called a channelist? Could you call yourself a channelist or a channeler?
Channeler, I guess. Yeah.
I'm going to coin that. You're a channelist.
I think it's the singular, a channel. I don't know. That's what I've always heard.
Yeah. Well, I just made up channelist. Do you now benefit personally from the information you're bringing through, Jessie?
I think over time, what happens is because it is coming through the system, there's residue that gets just simply deposited. I mean, you can't really avoid even hearing your own voice when you're channeling. And so now that I've been doing it for about 5 years, I can see my own beingness, the part I do identify with, has aligned more with a lot of the things that Vagrein at the beginning seemed very foreign to me or seemed like way beyond my ability to comprehend. So I'm definitely benefiting in that my state of being is extremely balanced. I would say that I handle catalyst in ways that perhaps are unexpected to others, and that I didn't have the instruments to do so before I started channeling. Like maybe things hit me harder and I experience them in different ways. But of course, I'm on a human journey and I don't have a one-on-one intimate relationship with Vagrein out of my own choosing. So it's not like I'm contacting them at the end of the day and going, what could I have done better? And what advice would you give me? Because that's just not the relationship I have with them. It's more of a collaboration, a work relationship. We're in service together to others more so than like, hey, give me all the answers. Plus they wouldn't do it anyway. And so I've definitely benefited, but do I contain in me now the amount of information or wisdom that has come through me through the time? No, because I still don't remember the sessions after I do them. I don't have like direct recall of the things. I have to go back and like listen or edit if that even comes up. And to be honest, I don't often go back and listen or edit because I'm on to the next thing. I have a new client or I have something else I need to be doing. So a lot of it stays in a holding pattern. So I get the subconscious benefits instead of necessarily the conscious ones.
And I know you mentioned that when you first started channeling, you had downloaded a app and recording software, decided to just start channeling. Yeah. So what was that like that first time? I mean, were you shocked when you listened back to what you channeled? Was it something that you would never have normally said, and that's how you kind of knew it wasn't coming through you? And what was the process? What is the process like when you're preparing to channel?
So the first time it came through, there were a lot of emotions. They weren't they weren't heavy emotions. There wasn't like a flood of emotion, but it was a lot of different complicated things going on. Because first, there's the doubt that you've actually gone crazy. Like you're like, well, that's it. Like I'm crazy. Now what? Like how am I gonna live the rest of my life if I'm crazy? You know. And then there was also like a lot of irritation because some aspect of me knew that this was the case before I went into it. And I had so much resistance. I really didn't want to do this. And I knew that the minute I took that first step, it was a consent towards being me fully. So the part of me that always knew somewhere that this was my calling was, you know, had to die off to that resistance and had to like let go of the resistance of it, which did eventually, you know, change quite a lot of things in my life. Things fell away that couldn't support the channeling or that weren't appropriate for me anymore. Other things came into my experience. So there was a knowing and an irritation that, oh God, really? Like, really? Now this is what we're going to do? Seriously? Like, I was not wanting that. And that crazy thing was definitely a big emotion. And it was surprising, but also there was a lot of relief, to be honest. There was a lot of relief to allow that pressure of trying to hold on to the not being weird. Holding on to the resistance was also very effortful. So much going on. And I'm sure your listeners can relate to when you're fighting with yourself to that level, how much happens when that dam breaks and goes on. But it wasn't for several weeks afterwards. And in fact, in that first channeling session, they even told me, they were like, listen, don't worry. You're going to have support immediately for what you're doing. And yeah, they were like very reassuring. The whole first session was just for me. It was like, listen, you don't have to do this. Thank you for being here. Everything's okay. These are the directions you can decide. They even told me like you can even not say you're a channel and like just take this information on as yours. We can work with you that way. Like you can be like some sort of teacher. It doesn't need to be trans. And I was like, no, please. I don't want to know anything about. I don't have anything to do with this. I don't want to take responsibility for anything. So it was very soothing. They are a soothing energy. And so very shortly afterwards, a couple weeks later, I happened upon a group of people who loved channeling. And it was through them talking about how much they loved channels and channeling and how much they gained from it, the benefits that eventually I was like, guys, this weird thing happened to me a couple of weeks ago that I've been experimenting with. They were like, oh, we have to do it. So I had an audience within the space of a couple of weeks. And that's when things really took off, because that's when I realized, oh, you know what? None of this has anything to do with me. I don't need to be all tangled up in my insecurities and my doubt and my fears and my blah, 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 because then I'm just robbing the people for whom this is for from having this information arrive to them. So that would be really selfish of me to be caught up in my story.
Well, it's interesting because there are no such thing as coincidences, right? Everything happens for a reason. And it sounds like you being brought into that group of people that were channelers was definitely not an accident. I'm sure it was your higher self or your guides kind of bringing you into that scenario just to kind of reassure you. And by the way, this entity sounds very kind, very supportive, which is really nice. I'm sure that probably is part of why you wanted to continue working with them, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's such a powerful message to talk about being your authentic self, because like you just said, when the dam breaks, it just opens people up into a whole new world that they maybe couldn't otherwise have seen. But once they step into that world, they realize that's the world they probably were meant to be in all along. But the fear is what's holding them back. So I think that's really important for people to hear.
But you kind of know from the universe when you're going in the right direction, like who finds a group of channelers? Like that's amazing, you know? They didn't know.
Yeah, we were just like super channeling enthusiasts. They were all about, you know, gathering and having like live streams of Bashar stuff and all this stuff. And I really, like, I'm not someone who watches, like, I actually have a problem. I can't actually absorb any channeled material. I think that's part of how I'm made, like to not be able to pick up on other people's stuff. But they were just super enthusiastic about everything to do with this world and so open to it. Like all the doubts that I had about like, oh, is someone going to think I'm faking it or whatever it was? These thoughts had never passed their minds. This was a completely different spectrum to my insecurities. And it was really amazing to find them. Yeah.
Well, I've been a longtime Bashar fan. I just follow his work and I think he's amazing. And the information that comes through is so beneficial. And along those lines of being authentic and being your true self, do you feel like this, like doing this channeling, was this part of maybe a life contract your life path in terms of what you really were supposed to be doing all along and you just finally discovered it?
Well, I've had too much with Vagrein to know that anything could be other than what it is. So everything is exactly as it is and everything is exactly perfect. So even that resistance or that waiting or that playing out in this particular way was exactly what was required to arrive at the point where this could become my life's mission. So there's nothing that's out of place. I don't feel like it's what I was supposed to be doing all along, but it does now in this moment feel like what I was supposed to be doing all along. I know that's like a paradox because everything is exactly right. Now, do I have a guarantee that tomorrow Vagrein will still be here and this energy will still come through? No, of course not. Like how can you have a guarantee on anything in life? Do I have any anxiety about that either? No, of course not, because up until that point, there's no need to have that sort of thing. But until it serves, it'll serve. Who knows if something else will come through? Who knows if something will evolve? Who knows if I'll decide I have a passion for tap dancing and won't have any more time to channel? And if that's the case, then that too will be perfect and the energy of consciousness coming through me.
So, Jessie, we have spoken to a few channelers and some of them have had experiences when they were younger. And I know you touched briefly on it, but did you have any paranormal experiences when you were younger? And what did that look like if you did?
So I had both paranormal and what could be considered extraterrestrial or extra planetary experiences as a kid. Like I said, it did come with its nobody believing me and it feeling very real to me. Some of it was, did have fear involved with it. But because I think I was so accustomed to it by the time I had awareness or language, none of it ever really felt like a threat. So what was really scary for me was the fact that nobody else could see it, not so much the beings themselves or the energies themselves. And then as I learned that you're meant to be afraid, it was probably not correct for me to watch this movie when I was a kid, but I think I was 4 years old and watching Poltergeist with my family. So, you get the conditioning of things coming into your system of like, oh, ghosts are scary, or this is not okay, or, we must fear the unknown. And I wasn't really created in that way, or I didn't have that naturally in me to fear what wasn't entirely real. But it does get conditioned. And some of my experiences were also really, for a child, very confusing because you don't necessarily know what's going on or that you have in some way on a soul level consented to it. So actually a lot of that got resolved during my own pregnancies. So because it was, then related to my history with children and things like that. And a lot of that got resolved simply by asking questions you can go back and ask things that have occurred in your past, like what didn't I see at the time that perhaps can serve me to clear this particular memory in a way that would be most fulfilling to my life now. And you might get little trickles of answers of like, oh, well, when this was occurring or when this thing happened, you had a certain perspective, but now that you're older and wiser and understand things a little bit better, this is really what was going on. And so I did a lot of that kind of work, almost, Vagrein would call it kind of time traveling even, because you're doing it with your imagination, but you're actually impacting the past. And then you can clear a lot of things. So even though I don't interact with ghosts, at least as much as I can not interact with ghosts now, there's the ability to turn that part of my abilities on or off. So I won't do mediumship. I won't, speak to someone's dead relatives. Every once in a while, someone comes to me. That's a different sort of situation. But for the majority of the part, I'll just not turn on that part of the radio dial ever. I only prefer to do the channeling of like Vagrein's energy.
So fast forwarding to your 40th birthday, which is what I understand was the day that you decided, okay, yes, I'm going to give this a try. Was there something that day that was a catalyst for that made you, okay, this is my birthday, I'm going to do this?
No, it really was literally like just here, just right here. I was literally just like tidying up the kitchen again. You have young kids and you're constantly dealing with the house. And I don't know, it was a day that they were off at camp or something like that. And it was just too annoying, this energy, this excess of buzz, and I can feel it. Like it's the same buzz. It's the same buzz that Vagrein invites through now, but it was like, you know, if you have like that annoying friend who's going, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, and then you're like, leave me alone. Stop saying that I can do the thing that I know I can't. And then they're like, no, try. And you're like, oh, actually I can do it. So that's the kind of energy it was. Very friendly and encouraging, not, you know, obnoxious or you know, provoking. But I'm a very stubborn person. I think I know best all the time. And I wanted really to prove to this energy that it didn't know what it was talking about. And turns out I'm also, you know, humble enough to go, okay, fine. It was me. I didn't know what I was talking about.
Well, you're in very good company because we're also both very stubborn.
Okay, great.
We can start a club. I know that other channels have often said when they bring through information, they know it's not anything that they know, you know, that they know personally. So that's how they're aware that this is another entity. This information is coming through them, not from them. So is there something that has ever come from you or anything that comes from you when you're channeling where you're like, that definitely did not come from me? I know that that's not something I personally am aware of.
Well, it's all of it, because in full trance, I'm not aware of anything. So I'm not even there to judge whether or not that's me or not. Only really the first sentence or two am I sort of like still kind of like hanging around, like checking out what's going on, right? And it's interesting because the first sentence or two will almost always be exactly the same. So it's almost like a key for me to feel comfortable, and then off I can go. But when I listen back to it, is if I ever do, is when I do recognize that there's like, where did this come from? Also, my speech pattern's completely different. My vocabulary can be extremely different. In other words, it's much higher. They had me read the dictionary at the very beginning, so that's fun. If you ever want to read the dictionary, have a great time. But they were like, no, this will not do. And I was like almost compelled to sit there with a small dictionary and just like go like, huh, oh, that word. Oh, it like very odd, but what occurred. And they're just way smarter than me. Like it's just like, I don't have that level of advice for people. And I also know this because I do have many clients where I'll channel for them and I'll also do coaching for them. And it's extremely different flavors of things. It's not contradictory. My coaching is very much from the human perspective and like how to apply principles. And yet the channeling is always at this much higher level where it's like, where do you come up with this? So I know that that is definitely an aspect. And at the very beginning, I did have a lot of doubt. So they would provide me with experiences that were undeniable. Like they would say random things that later on someone would hear in a recording and they will be like, for example, they'd say like the popcorn's ready in the middle of a channeling session. 3 weeks later, I'd get an email from someone who had heard that channeling session because a friend of them emailed it to it. And exactly at the moment that they were about to burn down their house because they had put popcorn in the microwave, Vagrein in the session goes, the popcorn's ready. This person remembers and they go take the popcorn out of the microwave. So it's insane to have had these confirmations, and you get enough of those. And after a while you're like, okay, look, I don't know enough to think that I know something about what's going on.
Right. Oh my gosh. That is really confirmation right there. That's amazing. Yeah. Like I'm still in awe to hear that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. And do you do any type of training to help manage this energy, or did you do any type of training in the beginning once you started channeling to kind of learn how to manage things and bring the information forward?
No, none at all. So it seems like I would be what's considered sort of a natural channel type of thing. But, you know, that's the same as someone who has a natural athletic ability and they're a very fast runner naturally. And so they are then recruited into, you know, being able to run sprints or marathons or whatever it is. I think that you can train towards things like this if that's something that's a desire. So I don't think you need to necessarily have the same story that I had. But in my case, there really isn't anything I have to do or anything I even have to align. Like I would say I probably meditate way less than I used to now. So it's not even like I'm like, okay, now I have to be extra spiritual. It's more of a releasing into what's naturally there for me. And that's how that works for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it was one of your natural gifts. And now that you're finally utilizing it, it just comes on very easily for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you be willing to bring Vagrein in to speak with us?
I would love to. Let's see what they
Great.
are up to. They've already had a couple of sessions today, so they're ready. They're ready to go. It takes a couple minutes, and so I will see you at the end. You'll have to let me know how it went.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Good now to you. We are pleased to be here with you and your friends and are eager to discuss with you anything you so choose to know more of yourselves. Hello.
Hello, Vagrein. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for being with us.
We thank you.
So, Vagrein, our first question today is, what is free will?
Free will is the option, the choice that you have, the ability to go against yourselves, to go against the flow of the isness of all that is, and input your own creative aspects to the creation of more of the expansion of all that is. Free will does not exist once one is in full alignment with self, because there would be no choice other than to be in full alignment with self. Therefore, free will is that ability, your divine choice ability to not be in full alignment.
Could you tell us who is God and who is Jesus?
The frequencies that you are referring to are universal frequencies. They are recognizable by you. The names you have given to them are for convenience sake, whether or not there is a historical character that mirrors within their lifetime one of these two frequencies, does not discount that this frequency is eternal, therefore is able to be tapped into by each and every one of you, in the case of Jesus, for example, or any other being that you have admiration for. So that is the answer to who is. It is not entirely a who, it is a what, it is a bandwidth, it is a specific wave, a way of energy being able to be perceived and then can be manifest in many different ways. That of God is similar. God is a concept that you humans have created, not that it does not exist, but the box that you have put it in is a creation of humanity to try to explain what that high frequency is for you, that frequency that is touching everything that it is in contact with, that you yourselves are in contact with. That familiarity that you have with the isness of all that is can be put in the box of God. It can similarly be put in the box of source. It can be put in the box of light. It can be put in the box of love. These are terms. The fact that you have placed much story, many different stories around the concept of God or gods, does not erase your familiarity as one that is in its right, in its birthright, connected with that energy to have recognition of it. So ultimately, it does not matter who, what God is in your storyland. All that does matter and retain importance is that you know that you yourself are directly connected with that particular frequency.
Thank you, Vagrein. How does karma work?
Karma, again, is a concept that you have created for facilitating your understanding of something that can be quite complex. We will underline or outline that complex system, but it is okay to imagine it in the ways that you have been described as karma if you so choose. Our outline, however, would be that you as an individuation, having access to only one version of self in each individuated moment, can in some ways tap into the knowing that every other existence that is possible is available to you and has been. If there were past, which there is not, because there is no linear time outside of your perception of it, for your experiencing. So karma, the explanation that you have been given that the things that you do will be done to you, is 100% accurate, but it is not some sort of threat to live your life by. It is a knowing that this is consensual. That if you go out and as you go out into the world and have experiences and bump into other versions of self, which is all that other people are, that at some point in time, you as consciousness, you as the all that is, have also chosen to be on the receiving end of whatever it is you are sharing. You do have free will. You do have the ability to choose whether you will do an action that will add to the joy of the other or take away from the joy of the other. And you do not need to fear that what you are doing is going going to be punished, for example, simply knowing that you at some point as an individuation will indeed choose to be the other self that is experiencing the other end of that bargain. Why is this? Because you are ultimately the all that is, and you do indeed want to experience every potential reality that could possibly unfold under the sun. So all karma does balance out. There is no individuation really when it comes to karma. But in your teachings, those who did first understand these concepts did see the opportunity to, shall we say, coax or convince you to be what they considered to be better people, though there is no ultimate judgment of you, but what they considered to be better people by teaching you that whatever you give out will come back and return to you. This is unfortunately in some ways fear-based and does cause in some people energetic frequencies that are not as high as knowing simply that you will choose to have every experience under the sun.
Thank you. Does reincarnation exist?
Not in the ways that you think it does. You do have other selves in parallel existences that you can perceive of as in past existences in your perception of linear time that are closer to you in terms of the connection of your storylines, or closer to you in terms of the connection of what is relevant for both of you to be learning simultaneously. And this does transcend any barrier of time, space, location, etc. You would perceive of it as a past life, for example, if that being seemed to be in some historical period that was different than the one that you are in. And you could then say, this is my past other self. The reality is more along the lines of you have a telepathic / non-physical connection with other versions of yourself that are more in alignment with the version that you are currently experiencing, and you have codes that you can share between one another. But ultimately, everything that is a past version of you, and everything that is a future version of you, because everything is in manifestation occurring simultaneously.
Okay, this is a question I've been dying to ask. Do we live in a matrix?
Well, in as much as you understand what a matrix is, yes. And in as much as what you understand life to be, yes. So it is not real, but it is as real as it gets. There's not some other experiencing that is more real than the reality that you have created for yourself. So it is indeed, yes, not the ultimate reality of all that is, because you do know this in yourselves. You do know that there is some level of something not being quite right. And this is demonstrated to you all the time, or you can at least feel it within yourselves. But simultaneously, it is not as if you are actually playing a video game someplace else and there's an actual other physical version of you that has been plugged into something and it is now experiencing that. You as non-physical have chosen to come into and slow down into a physical reality. There's only a portion of you that has done so, and the rest of you is in that space of guiding, which is why we always would say to align yourself with that part of you that is grander, that part of you that is non-physical, because that is reality, the more large aspect of your individuation, while your physical self, or the aspects of you that you believe to be your identity, are indeed simply a portion of that grander identification with the individuation that you are on a non-physical level.
I've often heard there are different versions of ourselves living different lives. Can you share about timelines and how do they work?
Yes, but it is much more vast than simply different versions of you that look similarly to you, that have had up until a certain point a similar pathway, because every being that you are encountering in your physical life is literally a different version of you that you could pop in or out of if you so choose to do so. That is not the reality you are choosing in this now moment. You do not choose the reality in which you can experience multiple timelines at the same moment. But what you are asking is, what about all of those other selves that seem to be more like me, the one that decided to not brush their teeth this morning compared to the one that decided to brush their teeth this morning, and which of them loses their teeth later on, or whatever it may be. Timelines are shifting in each now moment. So every time you feel or perceive the passing of time, you are literally shifting into that other version of yourself. And there are infinite other versions of yourself, closer and further away. There are versions of you where you are a strawberry. But you do not necessarily identify with those versions because they are quite a while away from the reality that you are experiencing. So when you ask about these parallel versions of you that are living out slightly different lives, we say that is wonderful to imagine into them. It is also very functional if you would like to adopt any of their behaviors because they are so close to you. You can simply pop into their reality, match the vibration of whatever it is you are wanting to learn that they already have, and bring it back to this reality. Shifting timelines does not mean that you will shift necessarily your past or your future. It simply means that you are constantly in the Rolodex of shifting between one version of self and other. Otherwise, movement would not be even possible. We will also let you know that your past is as flexible as your future. And if you choose to have different memories, you will choose to have a different now. Does this answer the question sufficiently?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And actually, as an add-on to that question along the same lines, I've also heard that everything exists now. They call it the eternal now. So if that's the case, then how does time work? Because wouldn't that mean that every possible outcome for every single scenario ever conceived would already exist?
Yes.
Okay, my brain cannot comprehend that.
We understand, and it is not needed to comprehend it. All that you can or need take from that piece of information is that if everything already exists, then you do have much freedom to choose between the things that are most likely or probable for you in the next few nows, though they are not the next few nows. You have the ability to choose and to play with the infinite possibilities of all that is. So, for example, it does not make much sense to believe that something is impossible in that understanding, because if it already exists, then it is indeed possible. It is only you that is being waited upon to align with that outcome.
Wow, that's a very freeing thought. So we just have to make the choice to pick that outcome and choose it for ourselves.
Yes, you may need to work through anything that you are holding on to that is preventing you from having that. For example, if you think that you will wake up tomorrow with millions of dollars in your bank account for no reason whatsoever, you will then have the opportunity to work through any fears that you might have of, for example, Mr. Taxman finding out what has occurred.
Absolutely. And I'm going to choose that for myself, to have the millions of dollars. What dimension are we currently living in on Earth right now?
Well, it is a tricky question because you have invented all of the thematics and the labels about those. There are those of you who think you are in the third dimension, the fourth dimension. These are arbitrary terms. What you are living in this now is more accurately described as a transition from separation consciousness, or shall we correct, a desire to transition from separation consciousness to unity consciousness. And in this desire, you will be in the space of receiving everything that is required to make that desire a reality, if you so choose that reality in or within the lifetimes that you are offered as a collective in this now.
How can we create abundance in our life?
By choosing it, by recognizing that it is already there. The things that are indeed gifts to you are always free. Abundance, when you are referring to it in form of the system of monetary exchange that you are currently playing with, is not true abundance. It is not really what you are after when you are saying that you want money, because ultimately you want money to get things that you think you cannot get otherwise. You want money to buy safety. You want money to buy health. You want money to buy comfort. You want money to buy happiness. You want money to buy fulfilling relationships, perhaps. But the money in and of itself, or that abundance that you believe that you need to have these things, will always, in all ways, be withheld from you until you can recognize that the things that you truly want are not related to the abundance. We do understand that you are in a system. We do understand that this system does propose to you many options to disagree, free will, with what higher consciousness is telling you about your abundance. But you have an abundance of air to breathe. You have an abundance of sunshine. You have an abundance of everything that you could desire in terms of a feeling state by cultivating it within yourself. Once you recognize and can bask in the glory of the abundance of those things that money cannot buy, that you would try to use money to obtain, that money, or the question of money, becomes an easy flow for you in the non-pursual of the abundance of financial situations, you have the freedom to be yourself, do you not? How many of your listeners are in jobs that they do not like because they are afraid that if they were to leave them, they would not be able to pay the bills? We understand that in this system, that is what is offered to you as the storyline. But it is also a storyline that is keeping you in a space of not being able to do what you want with your unique creative lifetime. Therefore, up until such point as you believe in that storyline, you will always have the stimulus or the catalyst that will try to tell you that the storyline is real and that your own inner guidance is not. Because it is up to you to choose if your inner guidance is going to serve you in the ways that you want to be served in life. Your happiness is not conditional upon abundance, but your abundance is conditional upon your happiness.
I think that's a great response. And last couple of questions here for you, Vagrein, along the lines of money. What is to come of our financial system in the future? You just referenced it there briefly, and we're just curious, how will that turn out for us?
Well, you can have the answer of this question on your own because you can look at your own feelings about this system. We have yet to come across someone who is entirely enthused about the way things are going in terms of money and exchange of goods and services or time for other goods and services or time. Therefore, your desire to overthrow this system is quite strong, and your desire to be put in a position or to put yourselves in a position to find some new, better solution is also quite strong. If you are in a situation, because you are ultimate creators, where you have a desire to create something new, there is no alternative but the universe to put that potential in your path. And in this particular case, you are not necessarily yet, and we are not saying this will not be the case, because of course everything is possible, but you are not necessarily yet in a position where you believe that you can do that in a smooth manner. Therefore, the discomfort of doing something in a bit of a bumpy way will be yours. Does that mean that if you do not play into the fear, you will still have a bumpy ride? No. You can simply watch as the roller coaster goes over the bumps and hold on for dear life if you need to during that transition period. But do know that ultimately, as things are untangling, new connections are being made, new threads are being connected, and new material is being created for you. So you do know that your financial system right now is not sustainable in a world where you would like to live in unity consciousness. Therefore, you will either have the joyful, creative inspiration of what to create next so that everyone can have a good time with this transition, or it will all, shall we say, fall apart, and you will have to understand that you will live through those emotions if you can feel them, allowing yourself to go through that transition with as much grace as is available to you in any given point in time.
Thank you, Vagrein. So
Thank you.
Let's wrap all this beautiful knowledge into this one last question.
Yes.
What is the purpose of life for us humans?
Well, we would say at this point to have a good time and to learn how to have a good time, because we do know that there is much suffering. We do know that there is much challenge. We do know there's much catalyst. We do know there's much contrast for you. And part of being alive was you deciding to come here and experience all of that. So you would not erase it. You do not yet want pure peace. You do still want the drama. You still do want the challenges so that you can overcome them. So allow yourself as much as possible the experience of being human, the experience of being day to day in your own field and in the field of others, playing with the clay and doing the best that you can so as to raise your vibration bit by bit and thereby being an example to anyone else who would choose to look at you as an example in the raising of their vibration as well.
Well, thank you, Vagrein, and thank you for giving us your time. We're very honored to have you. Is there anything you'd like to give to us before we go, a final message for our audience?
No, we believe that your audience is quite balanced and that they are in a space of their natural journey towards more and more contentment, more and more opening of their minds and their hearts to what is available to them. We will also say that we are not any further away or distant from you, as you feeling into the same vibrational frequency. You are never alone, and you can in each now moment find that support from the universe, which loves you dearly, much more than you love yourselves, in each next now moment. And with that, we leave you with the light and the love of 1,000 suns. A nine.
Welcome back. So
Hi, thank you.
how do you feel about that? Are you able to retain any of that information?
Not really. No. I feel great. So I always feel good after channeling. That's important for people to know, I think, because sometimes people hear mixed messages, oh, it's draining or something like that. I never feel drained. I always feel very good. So for me, it's a pleasure to channel. I have to say my days are a lot faster than some other people, because if I channel for 4 hours in a day, there's just 4 hours of the day missing. So that's entertaining, and that can be very confusing, because I can be in the afternoon and still feel like morning for my memory systems. But for this particular session, I have recall of someone brushing their teeth. So I'd like to find out about that. That's interesting. I have
or not brushing their teeth, actually.
Or not brushing their teeth, yeah. Or I have recall about something else. What was the other thing?
Oh my God.
I'm not even going to try and seek it, because it might take too long. If it pops in, it pops in. So
yeah. Okay, so this is so silly. I just, because my reaction was so strong, and I didn't want people to think, because I was literally like, oh my God. Like, I mean, it was.
No, everybody knows I didn't brush my teeth.
Well, because it's like, I woke up this morning, and we had an earlier than normal interview with you. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to wait till after I'll brush my teeth. And then I was like, no, I'll brush my teeth, because apparently I think you guys are going to smell my breath through the thing. And I don't know why.
They did, I guess.
Yeah. As Vagrein was speaking, I was thinking, oh, thank God I brushed my teeth, because I feel like it, I was just thinking it. And I don't know why I was thinking it. It was, and then she said, if someone decides whether, I literally was like, are you out of am I in the Twilight Zone? It just, because I just was thinking it, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I had how you brush your teeth, it's chalky.
Yeah.
And maybe I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't have brushed my teeth. I think that's what I was actually thinking. And I was like, because it's all chalky, and I don't normally have, that, and I was having it. And she said, I was like, oh, that's so weird. Anyway, I was like, because you were just talking about the popcorn.
Hilarious.
And
it's like the popcorn. Yeah, it's the popcorn thing. It was a confirmation for you guys.
Right.
And it's so dumb. I mean, I know it's just brushing your teeth, but it's just like that confirmation that this person is in another. It's just crazy. I'm sorry, I'm not articulating that well, because I'm still kind of like a little bit.
Well, Jessie, I'm glad to hear that you're energized when you do this, because like you said earlier, I have heard other channels talk about how they feel kind of drained after they do some channeling sessions. And so it's good to hear that that's not the effect for you. Do you ever just channel for yourself? Like when you're home, do you put the recorder on and just start channeling to see what comes through?
So that happens extremely rarely. The times that it has, it's because I've been struggling with something that I'm not either understanding in myself, or something that's happening in like the collective. Like, for example, like, there was a lot of talk with the COVID stuff of like, what's going to happen? So there was a lot of fear in my system. I was like, oh my gosh, I have this reference point. I can just go ask Vagrein, like, what's going to happen, And they, they do have quite a high perspective on things, right? So sometimes you don't even want that perspective as a human, because you're like, I don't want to zoom out that far. Like, I don't want to know all is well when I'm freaking out. And like, that's not really soothing. But sometimes I've gone to them about some, and it's very rare, but certain issues or certain things that have occurred. And I've wanted a bit of that guidance. But what I've also noticed is that whenever I do that, my fears are the same as everybody else's fears. So what I've learned to do is, when I'm channeling for myself, I share it, because I'm not afraid of like people seeing where I'm not perfect, because that's also important. And whatever is coming through my system is generally being mirrored in so many other people. So it's just worth kind of going like, let's just lay it all out there and be as transparent as possible, because whatever Vagrein's going to say to me for sure is going to serve someone else. So I love doing it in that way. But really, in terms of like my personal stuff, I really don't want to hear that, like, I should just be happy. Like, I think all of us have this like thing,
Right.
we're like, stop telling me to be happy and I'll manifest everything. I want to have the hard way. I want to have like someone who commiserates with me for a day. And
Right.
Vagrein is not gonna ever be my buddy. They're always gonna try and bring you to a higher perspective. So, I'll probably just text a friend and that'll
There
be
you
for
go.
me the best way to do things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was definitely impressed with a lot of the information that you shared. I'm going to have to listen back on this because there was so much that I need to hear again. But like the answer that I got with a couple of questions I asked was very clarifying for me. So I really appreciate, I appreciate that information, and I appreciate you. And we just want to say thank you for your time today and for sharing your gift with us. And you've been so generous with being able to do that for us today. So we appreciate that. And just as we wrap up, Jessie, I know you have a couple of books and you've got a website and you also do some coaching. And so we'll include all of those links in the description of the video. But just before we wrap up, is there a final message that you'd like to leave us with today?
Just try to have as much fun as possible. We're here one time as this particular version. We do, there's like the ability to be infinite versions of self, and whether reincarnation is simultaneous or not, there's definitely more for us after this particular, but you're only going to be you for now, right? So enjoy it. Enjoy all the quirks and the foibles and the mistakes and the things you don't like about yourself and the things you do like about yourself, and just really allow yourself to relax into being you, because that's who you get to be for now. And so enjoy it.
That's such a good message, and it's something that we forget. So I think it's a great thing to be reminded of. So thank you so much for that. And again, thank you for your time, Jessie. We wish you all the best, and we just appreciate you. Thank you.
Hi, Jessie.